Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Curt Schilling Baseball Show, episode 21. Good morning, Bill. Good afternoon, good evening, good night, whatever it is where you are.
Hey, Curt, how you doing?
I'm
I
good.
got to
I'm
throw
good.
this at you right out of the gate. I read today that only 6 games so far this year have taken over 3.5 hours to play. Do you know how many games last year were over 3.5 hours?
Every single Yankees Red Sox game, probably.
361.
How many?
361,
Wow.
which
That's
was
awesome.
down from 530 in 2021.
So it did.
It's working.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
working.
And now what I'm very curious to do is dive under the numbers and see if there are an increased number of injuries from pitching perspective or what and then I think we should dive into as the season goes along the disparity, if there is disparity in runs scored,
Yep.
because
We'll do a deep dive on that. We got to
yeah.
get some stats together on that stuff.
And of those 361 games last year, you said 21 this year?
Six.
All right. Well, speaking of games, 32 games is how many games the Yankees have played as of taping. And they're 17 and 15. The question that you posed, are the Yankees in trouble? Here's the thing. That's a multifaceted answer for this reason. They are 8.5 games out of the East as of today. Tampa's 25 and 6. That's a big deficit. You got to be, can they be 8.5 games better than the Rays, or 9 games better than the Rays? That's usually not the issue. The issue is when they're in, and I'm going to use air quotes, last place. The entire division's over 500, which is another result of the schedule. But it's not that you have to be 9 games better than the Rays. You have to be 9 games better than the Rays, 5 games better than the Orioles, 8 games better than the Blue Jays. And so, or not 5, but it's what, 5? Yeah, 5 games and then 2 games. You have to be better than 4 other teams, and they can be. They're certainly can with that lineup and with that pitching staff if they're healthy. Aaron Judge went on which is, I guess, leads to the next point, which Aaron Judge went on the 10-day injured list. Strained hip, which is one of those, he suffered that on a bad slide. I don't really know how that works. Carlos Rodon has a sore back, and he's trying to get back from his preseason injury. That's going to be, and that's we talked about that, Bill, in spring training. Guys that don't start the season out on the roster, especially pitchers, have a really, really hard time catching up. Giancarlo Stanton has a grade 2 hamstring injury mid-May. Again, I don't even know where to go with that. And other than to say mid-May, to me, when they're saying mid-May, that's them trying to have fans not be upset. I'm guessing probably closer to the end of May. They went 2-5 on a recent 7-game road trip, took 3 from the Indians. But they're 17 and 15, 8.5 out. Here's where the comment, your question actually has relevance. We talked about this before the season. We talked about it ad nauseum. The new schedule, the different schedule. They play 6 of their 13 games against Tampa, the team they trail by 8.5 games. 6 of those 13 games, they only have 13. It used to be 19, I think, to divisional opponents. Now it's 13. 6, almost half of their season's worth of games against the first place team are coming up in the next 2 weeks. That is huge. And that, I used to say as a player, it used to be very commonplace, especially on the East Coast, for hardcore fans to hear, oh my God, this is a huge series in like April 12th. And it's like, no, it really honestly isn't. And there's still 22 weeks left in the season, whatever. The schedule change does change that. There are now going, and they're always, I guess the way to look at it is everybody, as a player, you look at every series as big in a sense. But these are truly some very important. I mean, a win in April is every bit as valuable as a win in September. It's just focused on a lot differently in September than it is in April. Because in April, you say, oh, well, we got a whole season. In September, they never say that.
Well, they start this weekend at Tampa without Aaron Judge.
Yeah.
And, oh, by the way, Garrett Cole isn't pitching in the series.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a big series. It's a big series. And, I always say, if you're playing a series or if you're missing one guy, and you're not winning, then you weren't built to win. But they're not just missing one guy. They're missing quite a few guys. And they have always been, I'll never forget coming up through the minor leagues in the generation I came up. Every Yankee team at every minor league level was always stacked. The Yankees draft baseball players. They draft really good baseball players. So, they usually had an older minor league system because they drafted a lot of college guys. The reason that I worry if I'm a Yankee fan is this number, 109. 109. What is that? That is the difference in run differential between the Yankees and the Rays. The Rays are plus 113, which is unearthly. The Yankees are plus 4. The Yankees have scored 126 runs, which is staggering. It's one of the worst numbers in baseball. It certainly is the worst number in the AL East. They've scored 126, given up 122. The Rays have scored 207 and given up 94. I think they are the only, and I'm almost 99% sure, they are the only team in the big leagues that has given up fewer than 100 runs. And I don't want to be wrong on that. So let me look.
Well,
yes,
the Yankees also aren't hitting home runs. And
they're
Ryan Cashman wants that.
Well, but Stanton and Judge are out of lineup. So
yeah,
that's one of those things that's not a stat that you look at and go, gosh, I wonder why that is. I mean, the dude hit 60 plus home runs last year. He's not in the lineup. And Stanton isn't either. They're not hitting home runs. So they got to find other ways. And the problem is that a lot of this ends up falling on the manager's head. And I my love and respect for Aaron Boone, who as a people manager is as good as they come. He's doing everything he can do in that clubhouse to find the right personnel to put on the road, because this is about survival for the Yankees right now. The Yankees are trying to survive through this stretch without these guys. And we're not talking about a series. We're talking about possibly a month to 6 weeks. And I don't know if they can do that. And then that we're saying this is even crazier. Coming up over the next week or two, first place Pittsburgh. I haven't said that, I think, since the 90s. Host Toronto after getting swept by the Rays. Because of the Rays, who we think they are. First place Minnesota goes to Cleveland. The Rangers travel to Anaheim. 1.5 up on Anaheim. The Rangers travel to Anaheim. Only 1.5 games up on Anaheim. Think about that. First place Dodgers play San Diego. Only 2 games up on the Padres. Those series are the ones for me. I think there's a chance to see some special stuff in those LA San Diego series. The Diamondbacks are hanging around, being annoying. I think we talked about during the season or preseason, Corbin Carroll is who we thought he was. But the young pitching with Arizona, and I'm all right. You say his name, Bill, because I don't want to mess it up. Is it Fott?
Fott. Okay.
Yes. Brandon Fott, real quick. Yeah, he came up and had a rough start. And actually, that reminded me of the rough start didn't, but he was last year's minor league pitcher of the year. Arizona called him up. He struggled a little bit, which, so what?
And they still won the game.
They still won the game. Yeah.
He gave up 7, but they still won the game.
Yeah. And on the young pitching front, 24. By the way, Fott's 24. 2 other 24-year-olds, Mason Miller of the A's and the Mariners' Bryce Miller had their debuts. Or no, 4th career start for Mason.
First career start for
right.
For Bryce.
They combined, if I'm not mistaken, they combined to go 14 innings, give up 2 hits, and 1 earned run. Mason had a no-no after 7 and was pulled.
He had never thrown 100 pitches in any organized baseball game in his life.
Right.
I'm with you. We talked about this, but that one I almost understand.
No, but here's the thing. If he hadn't thrown 100 pitches in his life, why is he throwing 100 pitches in that game? Because and you might have heard me say this earlier, I don't ever want a kid to do something for the first time in the big leagues.
Right.
because that requires an effort level they can't give in the minor leagues. It's not possible. It just isn't. So if 100 pitches, he'd never done it, he should have been out after the 6th inning when he had 85 pitches. And you know, I don't know that you didn't. He put more effort into that start than any game he's ever pitched. It's just because that's the way it works. So him throwing 100, so he didn't throw the extra 30 pitches. In many ways, not relevant. If he's never thrown 100, then the outing was, to me, a failure in any way. Anyway, you can't ask a kid, a pitcher, to do something for the first time in the big leagues. That's why in the minor leagues, when you have 400, 500, 600 innings in the minor leagues, you have complete games. You have 120 pitch outings. You have those things that you get to the big leagues, and it's not like walking on Mars. It's something you've done before. So anyway, two phenomenally talented young men clearly showed up for their opening day for their matchup. Not related, born. You said, what are they born like a day apart?
Yeah, like a day apart.
All right. And then there's one more outing I want to talk about, and I'll close up with a funny story. Max Scherzer came back. He was suspended for 10 games, which I thought was completely ridiculous. He was suspended for 10 days, which is basically skipping a start. That's what it is. He did all the things you do, probably threw a couple of bullpens, might have thrown some batting practice, but certainly not a big deal from, there might be a little rustiness in the first inning or so. He was terrible. Gave up 6 runs in 3 innings, 2 homers, so he had a bad outing. And again, I tread carefully or lightly. I try to when I comment about a guy's mental toughness or whatever you want to call it. I mean, this is a guy who's had a Hall of Fame career, has gone through some personal stuff off the field I can't even fathom, is a stud. But I wonder if this is coaching or I don't know what it is. But here's the quote that kind of jumps out at me. After the game, he said, "I was spraying the ball, especially out of the stretch. And that's what you expect coming off a long layoff. This is not a long layoff. This is one start. A long layoff is being on the DL for 6 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever that is." But this next comment really jumped out at me. The number one thing was getting through this start healthy. And we did that. Now we can move forward. Why is that even on your mind? Why? I don't understand that. And that I don't even know how to respond to that other than I don't get that. And remember, this is a guy who had dead arm in the playoffs and didn't pitch, who had a stiff neck in the postseason and didn't pitch. It's just awkward. It's very and again, commenting on the guy's physical toughness is not something I'm comfortable doing. But I wonder about that and what that means. Everybody I've ever talked to has said he's a horse, a competitor, and all the things that go with that, which I believe. But those are just things that jump. Him and Verlander both are back, coming back, or are back. Verlander will pitch before we go to, I think, Thursday this week, right?
Yeah.
Bill? Okay. Yeah. They're 2-10 in their last 2-8 in their last 10. They need these guys back. Carrasco is going to be making a rehab start. And the Mets, who find themselves 5 behind the Braves, in a division that, except for Washington, is all sitting right around 500. Philadelphia got Bryce Harper back. We talked about that the other day. But again, I don't know. I don't know how to respond to that. But I want to go back to real quick. I'll tell a quick story before we're done today. On the Fought outing, his major league debut, Bill had asked me if I had a story about mine, and I do. So I get in 1988, back like 19 generations ago. I get called. I'm in Double-A with the Red Sox. I'd been drafted by the Red Sox in '86. I get traded in near the trading deadline in 1988 for Brady Anderson, and I got traded to the Orioles for Mike Boddicker. And at the end of the '88 season, when I was in Double-A, I got called up to the big leagues. Total shock. Had no idea it was going to happen. Frank Robinson's managing, and I'll tell some great Frank Robinson stories as this show goes on. But I get my big league debut. My big league debut is going to be against the Boston Red Sox, who had just traded me when they were in the pennant race. And this was in Memorial Stadium, old Memorial Stadium in Baltimore. And remember, this is the year that the Orioles started 0-21. But I make my debut. Now there's some kind of funny, cool things about it. Remind me at the end of this to tell you about the letter B, Bill. But I make my debut. Behind the plate is Hall of Fame umpire, world-class human being, Steve Palermo, who a year or two later was shot intervening in a mugging and paralyzed and ended up walking again. Phenomenal human being. Might have been the best umpire in the game at the time as well. Perfect guy for me to have that night. Catching that night was Mickey Tettleton, who was in the middle of a big season. The backup catcher on that team was San Diego manager Bob Melvin. Cal Ripken at shortstop, Eddie Murray at first base, Billy Ripken at second base. Yeah, so a lot of guys that you may remember. Anyway, I go out in the first inning, and I get my warm-ups done, and I turn around, and there's 35,000 people in the stadium in Baltimore because Baltimore has amazing fans. And I
that was the old Memorial Stadium, right?
Yes, it was. It was. And I get done with my warm-up pitches, and I turn around and I look at home plate, and Wade Boggs is digging in. And I'm like, wow, like Wade Boggs I'm facing Wade Boggs. It was like surreal. So I throw the first pitch. So anyway, Palermo comes out after my warm-ups he's rubbing the ball up. He goes, listen, kid, just throw it close. I'll call it a strike and we'll get going. And I was like, all right. So I throw a mediocre pitch, first pitch. He calls it a strike one, and we're off. I think it was a 2-2 count. Boggs grounds out to Cal Ripken, who throws to Eddie Murray for the first out. And I was like, wow. Because I grew up a baseball fan. So I'm like, oh my God, Wade Boggs just grounded out to Cal Ripken, who threw it to Eddie Murray, and I have an out in the big leagues. Anyway, I end up going 7 innings. We win on a walk-off in the bottom of the ninth, 4-3. It was a phenomenal thing. But one event during the game, so about the third inning, so I was a 3-pitch pitcher at the time. I had a fastball, I had a slider, and I had a forkball. And 1 was fastball, 2 was forkball, 3 was slider. So about the third inning, Mickey puts down 2 for forkball, and I throw a slider. Crosses him up, bounces, and hits Palermo. He's back there jumping around a little bit. Mickey kind of looks at me, and I'm like, all right, whatever. Next pitch, he puts a 3 down, and I throw a forkball. 3 slider, I throw a forkball. Bounces, hits Palermo again. Mickey comes out and goes, hey, you all right? And you have to know Mickey Tettleton didn't have anything but a monotone voice, and he was a huge man, and he was terrifying. And he's like, hey, what's up? And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, 2's a forkball, 3's a slider. I was like, oh, okay. All right. So he jogs back to home plate, and as he's jogging back, I'm going, okay, 2's a slider, 3's a forkball. 2's a slider, 3's a forkball. He puts down forkball. I throw a slider, bounces up and hits Palermo again. So Palermo comes out this time. And he's like, hey, kid, what's going on here? And I was like, I don't know. He goes, Mickey just said he called a slider and you threw a forkball. I was like, oh, I messed him up again. He goes, hey, listen, here's how this is going to play out. If you hit me again, you won't throw another strike, whether you do or not. You need to know what's what, because I'm not going to stand back there and be your pincushion. And I was like, okay, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. So I jogged back. He jogged back there, and I didn't get it wrong the rest of the night. But that was the story coming out of that game. And after the game, Mickey said in the paper, well, yeah, in the 4th inning, he was putting down this and he was throwing that. And then when I put down that, he was throwing this. And I was like, yeah, I was. I couldn't remember 3 pitches. That's how but anyway, we ended up winning, and it was a phenomenal event. And then something I remember forever. It was also the first night I left a ticket. So as players, you have what's called the pass list, and you can write names in, and for people you're leaving tickets for. My father had passed away in January of that year and never saw me pitch in the big leagues. But that night, and for all 436 starts of my big league career in the playoffs, I left my father's name on the pass list. So in every park I ever pitched in, there was this empty seat for my dad, and every sold out game I ever pitched, there was always one empty seat as well. So it was a tradition I started that night, and I'm proud to say I kept it up for my entire career. Also, real quick, the letter B.
The letter B.
Right. I'm pitching for Baltimore against Boston. Bruce Hurst is the opposing pitcher. Wade Boggs is the first hitter I face. Marty Barrett's the first guy to get a hit off me. Ellis Burks is the first player ever to homer off me. And Todd Benzinger is the first player I ever struck out. So
That's
my
tremendous.
first career strikeout, by the way, was number 38. Todd Benzinger wore 38 for the Red Sox. So I thought that was kind of unique.
Hey, before we go, Shohei pitched last night, so I had to come up with something about Shohei.
Okay.
13 strikeouts in 5 innings pitched. Only 2 other pitchers have done that. Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer. Oh, by the way, the Angels won their 3rd straight, and Mike Trout hit a home run. So
okay, so let's actually add another point to that. So Shohei Ohtani did something that only Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom, probably 2 of the most dominant pitchers in baseball. One's a definite Hall of Famer. One needs to stay healthy, right? That Ohtani just did something that only those 2 guys have ever done, right?
Right.
And by the way, he's hitting cleanup for that same team. That is what. So Shohei Ohtani did something that only 2 guys have ever done, and he's hitting cleanup. Let that sink in for a second. He can have a game where he hits 4 home runs, something only a few people have ever done, and he can have a game where he can punch out 15 in 5 innings, or 13 in 5 innings with somebody nobody's ever. I mean, that's
we didn't talk about it, but the start before this one, he was a home run shy of hitting for the cycle while winning the game, which nobody's ever done. Right. And the last at bat went to the warning track.
I was going to say he flew out to the warning track to end that game, or to end that run. Again, you can't talk about Babe Ruth, and this guy is one of a kind. No, baseball's never seen a player like this. And I know we talked about this last year. I wonder how many guys have bypassed or been bypassed that might have been able. I mean, it's not a lot, obviously, but that might have been able to do this very same thing, with the exception, except for the old school mentality of you're a pitcher or you're a hitter.
Right.
And I think it's that we're going to see that over the next, going forward, because even if they do pay him $50 million a year, you're going to be saving money, because your cleanup hitter is usually a $35 million a year guy. And we're finding out your aces are $40 to $50 million a year guys. And he's both. So,
for me, I'm just happy that the Angels right now look like they're going to at least contend.
Yes.
And they're not going to trade him.
Well, and that'll be good for baseball.
That'll be good for baseball.
That'll be great for baseball. And let me just give a shout out to Oakland A's fans everywhere. Sorry, your season's going to be complete poop salad. Look forward to Vegas, and because what they've done to that team is a shame. But on the other side of things, look out for Billy Beane. He won't be in Oakland, I don't think. Oh, well, maybe he will. Maybe he'll go to Vegas. I doubt it. But he may be on the market. So watch out for that one.
That will be interesting.
OutKick.com. Check us out. We're on Spotify as well. We'll be back on Friday with show 22. And
no, this one drops Friday. Show 22 will be next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday. Have a great weekend, and probably before our next show, Ohtani will homer a couple times and punch out 15 guys again. So there's that to look forward to. Anyway, guys, have a great weekend. Bill, have a great weekend. I'll talk to you on Monday. Cal, hey, wait, no, who's our new guy? We got to introduce our new guy.
John Cassio.
John Cassio, welcome to the show. John is going to be he's going to be actually turning this into like a professional looking podcast where I actually look more professional, if that's physically possible. I don't think it is, but we're going to give it a shot anyway. So we'll catch you guys on Tuesday. Have a great weekend.